Welcome to Let's Talk Business Phoenix, the Greater Phoenix Chamber's podcast. I'm your host, Todd Sanders, President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Chamber. Each week, we tackle key issues affecting businesses, the community, and state, aiming to drive growth and overcome challenges while uniting community leaders to move Phoenix forward.
Let's Talk Business Phoenix was produced in partnership with Ideas Collide, an agency offering a full suite of custom marketing solutions for your brand's unique challenges. Make a connection at ideascollide.com.
Welcome back to the podcast. We have a great show for you today. We have the Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court, Ann Timmer, is with us. She was previously with us when she was Vice Chief Justice, and so now as Chief Justice, we're thrilled to have you here. Congratulations, and thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much. I'm delighted to be back.
Well, obviously a lot's going on, but maybe for those folks who didn't get you on the sort of the first time we had you, a little bit about yourself, and then maybe a little bit about this role and what's changed in terms of your responsibilities in the court.
Sure. Well, a little bit about myself first. I was actually born in Nashville, Tennessee, to a father and a mother who traveled quite a bit. My parents are from the South, but my dad was with the Associated Press, which moves you around just like if you're in the Army. And my mother was a teacher. So we went all around the South and the Midwest, but finally landed in Phoenix when I was 14. And I went to high school here locally at Arcadia High School. Just loved Arizona, thought that people here are so accepting of the new kid that I said, I'm never leaving Arizona, and I haven't. I applied to one college, U of A, for the great reason that, hey, it's a couple of hours down the
That's
road,
right.
and it's a good university. Spent 4 wonderful years there, and then I decided, hey, I want to come back to Phoenix because I want to eventually practice in Phoenix. So I went to ASU Law School. And I practiced law for 15 years, got married, had 3 kids, and thought, okay, how can I serve the community a little bit better? And went to the Arizona Court of Appeals, which is our intermediate court of appeals, for 12 years. And I've been on the Arizona Supreme Court for 12 years. And now I'm the Chief Justice. And my role as Chief Justice is actually set forth in our state constitution.
Okay.
So our state constitution says we will have a Chief Justice who is in charge of the administration of the courts, so to speak. Now, obviously, I'm just one person, and I can't do all the administration of the courts.
Bygone era when they wrote that, probably.
Yes, very bygone. So we have an office of administrative office of the courts and an executive director who's extraordinarily capable man, actually, and that's about 450 employees across the state who do the administrative functions of the court, but that I oversee, and somewhat the Supreme Court as a whole oversees some of the functions. So my role has changed. I still sit on all the cases and make the decisions that people are probably most familiar with, that use
Sure.
a role of an appellate court judge, which of course is why I wanted the job in the first place. But the administrative role is actually what kept me on the court. I always thought I would leave before now and go back to private practice, but it's a real opportunity for everything that we oversee to administer not only the court system, but the practice of law and several other things. So there's a lot more to the role of the Chief Justice than most people probably
Right.
know.
A lot more dynamic probably in terms of what you're doing. Now, if we were to juxtaposition that with the U.S. Supreme Court, is it similar for Chief Justice Roberts, for instance? Is there sort of that administrative role as well, or is it different from Arizona's?
It's different. The Chief Justice Roberts actually obviously has an administrative role to a degree, but really not to the degree that a state Supreme Court justice has. Depending on the state. I really should only try to speak for Arizona. But we are responsible for many other things. What most people don't realize, well, of course, all the rightful interest in the U.S. Supreme Court and the federal judiciary, which people are taught and so they're most familiar with, is that 97% of the cases in the U.S. are actually decided in the state court system. So there are many more moving parts to a state court system than there are in the federal system. So, for example, one of the things that the Arizona Supreme Court oversees is the probation. Mm-hmm. So you would think, and in many states it's in the executive branch, but after someone is sentenced and is placed on probation, they're still in the judicial branch. And so that's under our supervision. Other things that we do, which, Why would anybody know this? I didn't. We oversee defensive driving schools, for goodness sakes. I don't know why. We administer we share responsibility with the counties for the juvenile detention facilities. Because of that, we also have education of juveniles in juvenile detention facilities. Foster Care Review Board is us. We license all kinds of people. We license attorneys, we license fiduciaries, we license the defensive driving schools, fiduciary firms, court reporters, other legal providers that we have. We license people called, what are they called? Intermediaries, who are people who put together, if you're looking for your birth parents.
Oh, sure.
And, sometimes they don't want to be connected. And so this is a person that is licensed to be the connecting force for that. So things like that, and I can go on and on about all of the things down the list that we handle, along with we do all the court rules. So any rules in the state, any rules in the courts, like rules of evidence, rules of procedure, all of those things are done by the Supreme Court as well. So I don't even pretend to know all the administrative functions that the U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice has, but I don't think it's in as myriad of issues as we have in the state system.
Well, it's mind-boggling to think there's this much underneath. I don't think most people just don't have a concept for that. Yeah. And so your days got significantly different, I'm assuming, and longer.
It did. It's gotten longer. As vice chief, I did some of that, and that's, I think, why we have a vice chief, which is also in our Constitution. It probably was put in there just in case the Chief Justice got hit by a wagon or something. There'd be somebody to pick up the slack. But it really has worked out for the vice chief to work with the chief and to have more of a seamless vision for the court and where we're going, so it's not so jarring each time a new Chief Justice takes over, which is once every 5 years we turn over.
Okay. And obviously, this is a new role for you, but you also, in a prior life, you in private practice were in business law, correct?
I was.
Okay. And so the plan was to go back into that before you went into this?
Yes. I went on the bench. At least I like to think I was relatively young, still in my 30s. No, granted, I was clinging to my 30s, but I was in my 30s still. And I went on the Court of Appeals, which at the time that was considered rather young for the Court of Appeals. Okay. The governor at the time, Governor Hull, said, I would never appoint someone who's under 40. So I'm the only woman in America saying, well, I'm 40-ish, and still in their 30s. But she appointed me. Now it seems like there's a trend to go younger so that they'll be there for longer. But when I was appointed, I was still in a pension system that for elected officials that was really geared towards having you in and out at no more than 20 years. Mm-hmm. And because there's a real financial disincentive to stay after 20 years. They have done away with that pension system now, although I'm still grandfathered in. So I always thought, okay, after 20 years, right. I would go back to practice. And now I'm at 24, coming up on 25. So my husband tries not to remind me what percentage I'm actually working for. But I
ignore the numbers, right?
No, I ignore the numbers. But I really wanted to stay. I'm not staying obviously for the money. I'm staying because I think I can do some good and kind of nudge the practice and of law and the courts in a good direction for Arizona, which rather struggles with getting legal advice and such for a number of reasons.
Well, the true definition of public service. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, you're
it's
welcome.
Important. I want to make sure that we do see the sort of the lighter side. Something about you that people may not know. A fact about you.
Oh, about
that
me?
Maybe on your bio or.
Oh my goodness. I think that if you asked my children, they would, because they say this to me all the time, saying, "Gosh, people, if they really knew who you were, they would not think you could be a judge." Because
all our kids think that, right?
I know. I don't think it's because they think I'm, not smart enough, but
right.
that I think they think I'm goofy. We like going to Disneyland, doing all of the roller coasters, and just kind of those things. But I really enjoy that kind of thing. I mean, little minor things, what people don't know about me. I can juggle. I can whistle louder than anybody I know.
Really?
Things like that. Oh yeah,
yeah.
I won't do that to you now, but like that.
Well, and I think too, you're in a very, very serious environment a lot of the time, and for you to be able to have that other side, it's goofy. I think that's good. You want that. You're a normal person, right?
It's a normal person, exactly. Oh.
Well, looking at the sort of and I asked you this last time, sort of the state of the judiciary. How do you see it? where are we today? What are we doing well? What should we be doing differently?
Well, funny you say that. We have, with each Chief Justice, we have a new strategic agenda.
Okay.
And I just put mine out when I took over, and it's a 5-year plan with goals and initiatives. And how it differs, and this is something actually the Arizona Judiciary does very well with this strategic agenda. All the departments, we have all the employees, and we have like 10,000 employees in our judicial branch in Arizona. A lot of that probation kind of things, but we have a lot out there. And so we have developed a strategic agenda, not as an aspirational agenda, but these really are the initiatives that will be accomplished in the next 5 years. We get limited resources because we're government. We get limited resources. So we have to be very, pardon the pun, judicious in where they go. So a new Chief Justice coming on will spend about 1.5 years before that time with a subcommittee group out there of people around the state with different interests in the branch to say, okay, what should we focus on in the next 5 years? This forces every department to get together in their own area saying, gosh, what do we need to do in the next 5 years? Where do we want to go in the next 5 years? And so, and then they come up with initiatives because they know if we don't get it in that strategic agenda, it's not going to happen.
5 years, right?
Yeah, 5 years. So I have the 5 goals. I get to pick those. And then the initiatives, I think we had like 250 or something that were proposed in this group. We whittled it down to somewhere around 100.
Sure.
And those will all be accomplished. They will all be done unless any one of them is turns out to be a bad idea. But that's what it will do it. So we do that very well. I just spent about 1.5 years with the former Chief Justice, my colleague who just retired, and we did a You Say Goodbye, I Say Hello tour around all of the counties. It's 15. Thank goodness we're not like in Iowa with 99. There's only 15.
Yeah.
So we hit all of the counties and talk with the local people and people in the courts to see everybody has a different culture, different needs, different concerns, and it was very illuminative. But there was an opportunity for them to kind of show off what they do. Yeah. And it is so impressive what people in their local communities will do with really no resources, but a lot of ingenuity and creativity and just, drive and compassion for people to try to help them navigate what can be a very scary system. So it's really impressive. And I think we do that so well. And I always say, if only people knew what they have, what a jewel they have in this court system, they would be, which I think is the best in the nation, honestly, they would be thrilled. Now that brings me to what we don't do so well, and that is letting people know what a jewel they have in the judiciary.
It's hard.
It's very hard. There's a lot of misperceptions about courts and what courts do, and how we overcome that. I think we need to be a lot better at communicating to the public. We need to be more transparent, and we need to think in a different way. We're used to, as judges and judicial employees, as we're just going about our business, doing our jobs.
Right.
And
second nature to you.
Yeah, we'll issue our rulings, and then we move on to the next case. And fine, go and talk about these rulings or discuss. And we don't think about it. Well, those days are done, in my view. And I have told the whole branch that we need to start thinking with a different mindset, because it's not that the media is doing a disservice. Maybe somewhere out, it's always people on the fringe. They're trying to have their say in a particular area, but I think people want to understand, what do these rulings mean? What does the court do? And we haven't been acting with an eye towards that enough. So I told you about my strategic agenda and the 5 goals. Number one is it has to be, and it probably always will with every Chief Justice, access to justice. So that's the number one goal. Lots of initiatives along those lines, which I'm excited about. But I put as number 2 this year because I'm so concerned, or for the next 5 years, something like, I know I've framed it better, but something like promoting trust in the judiciary. Along with that is simply not only educating people, but changing our practices in a way that enables people to understand what a court does, and frankly, what a court does not do. We're not another legislative branch. We don't create public policy. People don't understand that. And
it's tough for people to, I think, because there's a narrative out there that people seem to promote that that's the case, and it's
that's right.
not your job.
I don't blame people, honestly, for thinking that way. You watch the only court most of us are familiar with, the U.S. Supreme Court, and how they're appointed and how they make such a big deal about, well, whoever's going to be the president gets to appoint that person. And so I don't blame people for thinking that, but it's really not. At least I can tell you in the state system, in Arizona, I've never been a part of a decision that was made along political lines. I've been a part of plenty of decisions where we've made a decision that we don't like particularly.
Interesting.
If I could make another choice, I would have.
Personally, you don't like the idea, but from a legal perspective, you think this is what we have to do.
Of course, because that's our rule. When as I always tell my new law clerks that I get every year, when I was appointed, I didn't get a crown. I don't get to just fix the world the way I think it should be fixed. It's my rule. I have a very distinct lane, and it is to interpret the law and the Constitution and fairly apply that law. And that's it. And at times I'm like, oh, this is a terrible result. And many times when I write the decision, or even my colleagues, same thing, we might even acknowledge that and then say, but the answer is you need to go to the legislature and change the law, because that's the law.
Right.
And that's where it needs to be fixed.
That's the right part of government to fix that.
Well, it is, and it gives it more, heft too, because that's the people's branch. We elected those people to do just that, reflect the public will, if you will, not in taking just my court, the 7 of us, or a particular one court, judge. That's not their role, and we don't want that to be the role. So we do develop a little bit of law called the common law, law of like torts and contracts and things like that you're familiar with. And if the legislature disagrees with that, they can change it, and they will always then trump it.
Right, and then it's a whole different story.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that you mentioned is you get done with a case, you get done with a ruling, you move on, and I think for the average person, it's very esoteric. And so how is it that you can make this more sort of, I don't want to say friendly, but how for people, the average person, to really understand what's going on and feel like they have a sense for the judicial system?
Well, my first instinct was to sit down the entire state and say, you have to listen to me lecture about the 3 branches of government. But of course, that's not going to happen.
Right.
So what can we do? And I know people are interested. I mean, my goodness, look at all the crime podcasts and the crime shows, and people are interested. How do things work? And it's something. So how can we, do better at this? And so some concrete idea. I have formed a task force, because we're very good at that, on mostly made up of people like you, people that are in the either broadcast or market or whatever, and younger people. And I've asked them also to get a junior council of people like in high school or something. I'm like, how do you learn, and that kind of thing, and what do you want to see? How do you want this communicated? Because it's beyond me. And so, for example, some of the things that we've started to do already is, all right, we issue a ruling, an opinion. I'll just talk about my court. So my court issues an opinion. It can be difficult to digest, no matter how. We try to be very simple, but it can be lengthy. We have to address the parties' arguments, and tough to digest, particularly quickly. And who wants to read this? The abortion ruling that we did is a good example. I think that was there was a majority and a dissent. It was 108 paragraphs. That's a lot to take in. So we started doing, effective, I think just this last opinion we issued, is we're going to be sending out a press release simultaneously with the opinion. And it's going to be a summary, really, of, okay, this is what the court did today. This is what we decided. This is the impact. This is what you can do about it, if that's something that's
Well, I think that'd
pertinent.
be really helpful for folks.
Yeah. Well, we've sent it out the very first one, and it's going to be, the person that's going to be writing the press release is the justice who wrote that decision. So to make sure it's correct.
Yes.
So I actually just was the one that wrote the opinion. It is not a fascinating opinion for people beyond the parties of this case.
Sure.
It was a tort case having to do with what's called a notice of claim that you have to file with the government before you sue the government for a tort injury.
Sure.
And so it's a tricky statute, so that kind of thing. And so I was like, okay, let's try this out. So I wrote the little snippet of this is what it's about. Very simple, just and right to it point, without any legalese at all or legal authorities cited. and sent it out. And so it's out simultaneously with the link. And I was surprised we got feedback from people saying, oh, thanks, that's great. We can just read it, digest it, and either care to go read the whole opinion or not. But it really explains it. What I would like to go on from there and to do is to have do it by video. Because I really see that our society, we're coming a video society.
Ask your kids, right?
Yeah,
They'll tell you.
And who has time to read all of this stuff? So it would be great if we could send out simultaneously with, here's the link to, here's the opinion. Can you imagine with social media, okay, here's this case, especially one that you're really waiting for, that you're interested in. This is what the Supreme Court decided today. This is what it means. This is what you can do. In 35 seconds. Just a snippet to digest and then give people as I've said constantly now to people in my office, is that it's time for us, in the words of Hamilton, not Alexander, but the musical, to be part of the narrative. And we need to take back the narrative and start thinking in terms of being a little bit more of our own media, our own educational facility, and then let the people, people like you, reporters, they can see, I'm either interested, yes, I'll keep reading.
Right. Well, you mentioned the abortion ruling, and so many people wanted to understand what that was.
Yeah, what did that mean?
This wall of, not sure. I can sort of wade through it. Maybe I understand, and I think this goes a long way. It
goes a long way. It's funny that the day or two after that ruling came out, a high school group came in, and one young lady said, what was this ruling about? And I took about, 3 minutes and explained it, and they're like, oh, I get it. And, here's what one side said, here's what the other side said, this is what it was about, this is what it wasn't about, this is the next steps, which the next steps was, you have a problem with it, go to the legislature, which is exactly what happened. And then, of course, the initiative. So, which is how it should happen for developing,
you bet,
policy.
Absolutely. Let me ask you about, it makes me think about sort of the flurry of decisions that the court was asked to look at before the elections, the initiatives and everything else. You obviously, in the normal course of business, I think you probably have a good time frame and a schedule. How do you make room for those cases that really just can't wait and the public has to know? And clearly there's an election looming. How do you make that work?
Well, we know what's coming, which helps every year, every 2 years rather. So we can tell people, clear the decks, that you will have to be available to decide these cases. So, for example, I didn't take my vacation this summer because, got to be available. I wait and into the fall when you can go. So you make yourself available. You're cognizant of the deadlines, and you're right. It was a flurry this year. This was the heaviest year I think we've experienced. And it's a little frightening that you think, oh gosh, I don't have as much time as I normally would have to look at these. So you work in the evening, you do what you can, and you make your decision and you send it out with, okay, we'll explain it more fully in writing later if we need to, if it's opinion worthy. And then you cross your fingers thinking, gosh, I hope as we write this out, it doesn't turn out to be wrong. That hasn't happened yet, because I think we've gotten pretty good. But I recognize that, that time frame is scary to me. For this election, that's part of the reason, and this happened to us this year with one initiative. It was a lengthy, so to speak, for the issue in the trial court with an evidentiary hearing, and they appealed it with 2 days or so before the ballot printing deadline, and we found an error and sent it back, and people freak out. Well, we're not going to deprive someone of due process just because of this a private ballot printing deadline. That's really not our problem. But we try to work with it, but it is what it is. And that case worked out. So you try to anticipate. Yeah. It's kind of like pandemic planning, though. You try to anticipate.
Well, but it must put a tremendous amount of pressure on the system. And to your point, it is a bit of a high wire act, given so many questions on the ballot and the time frames. That must be daunting.
It is. We have good people, but we have staff attorneys that are very knowledgeable about this, and boy, they work very hard and give us some good research and memos and helps, and so everybody really just kind of digs in, and And election law is interesting. I think we all find it a very interesting area of law.
It seems to be getting a lot of attention recently.
Oh, increasingly.
So, we'll see where that goes. I want to, before we move on, I do want to ask you one other question. Obviously, the retention process was on the ballot. And to your point about sort of being esoteric, most people sort of don't necessarily, they don't understand how do they vote for these judges in terms of qualifications. But it turns out that when asked whether or not we should get rid of that process, they said no. We want to be able to vote on the judges. Thought that was interesting. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, on that. Well, I thought it was interesting too, and I don't know what captured people's attention on that particular initiative, because they could they don't really know a lot about the retention system, merit selection, because it is rather esoteric. It's in our Constitution, but they don't really teach it in schools. They tend to teach federal kind of thing. They don't teach state, what goes on in the states. And that's a real vital part of our Constitution, actually. So there's that part of it, but they also had a part in that if anybody's voted out this election, they're automatically put back in.
Correct.
Well, that's kind of like, why would they do that? And then the third little aspect was an individual legislator could ask this Judicial Performance Review Commission to investigate any judge. And that makes people nervous. That makes me nervous, thinking, well, wait a minute. I stay in my lane. I kind of want the legislature to stay in its lane. So there was a lot of moving parts on that initiative. So it could be, to answer your question of why did people vote no on that, it seemed like there were a few reasons to. But I think I agree what you were alluding to, that we might not know a lot about certain systems, but darn it, we know when people are trying to take control away from us. I think that's a healthy thing for our system.
Agreed. It's funny because I get a lot of calls on the initiatives and candidates, but the most is, well, what do I do with these judges? And I kind of try and help guide them, but it was pretty clear that Arizonans want to have the ability to complain about it and then vote on it.
That's right. We don't take it away from us. Well, I hope that people kind of look at that system. That system, it's a great system. It's worked well. But I appreciate Maricopa County in particular has really grown, and there's a lot of judges on those lists. If you look nationwide, I believe we have pretty short terms for judges, and many places like the Supreme Courts and such, I think we're one of the shortest ones, 6-year terms. So you're constantly having a third of that, I guess, bench on there. So I often wonder, maybe if we extended the terms a little bit.
Well, speaking of sort of turnover, former Chief Justice announced his retirement from the court. Governor Hobbs is now going to make a pick. Tell us a little bit about that process.
Well, the process, this is the merit selection process, which we were just talking about retention. That's the other end of it. This is the front end. So we have an application that the court has developed and has used over the years that's pretty extensive. I believe mine, after a single space, was like 80 pages with all the stuff that you have to put together for it. So it's really a heavy lift to do this kind of thing. It's an application they fill out and then submit it online. It's public record. So if you're interested in anybody, you can go and look them up.
Someone applies, you can look it up.
17 people applied for former Chief Justice Brutinel's position, and they're all online with exception. There's parts that are confidential, things you would think of.
Redacted.
That they just put where you live and things like that. But otherwise, you can see who these people are. So I admire people that do it, because you're putting yourself out there, obviously, your professional reputation, et cetera. And so they put it out there. There's a citizen group that's the nominating commission. Those folks are appointed by the governor with the Senate confirmation. And so it's 5 lawyers and 11 lay people, and it's chaired by me, the Chief Justice. It's an interesting commission because it's dominated by non-lawyers. And so I think I've always thought, well, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it is.
And they also have commissions for the trial court levels, but I'm just talking about the appellate one. But they're all set up the same way. And I can tell you the lay people are usually the ones that really weigh in and really are the ones that they have quite the voice. They don't defer to the attorneys. The attorneys weigh in, but they're not dominating, which people might think would occur.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, so they apply, and so we'll set up a meeting. We have one set up for the end of the month, sometime toward the end of the month, and we will sit in a public meeting, and people will come and they will give comments on each of these people as if they'd like to. And then anybody that isn't even asked to give comment, that just wants to give comment, will come and do so. And we'll limit them to like 2 minutes. because we've got to get through the day. But they'll come, and sometimes they're say good things, and sometimes they say bad things. I don't like this person, especially if it's been a judge that has been on the trial court. Hey, they decided my family law case. I got totally raked to the coals, that kind of thing that you can expect. And so that's done in public and talked about. And then the commission will debate in public and say, well, who they think is good and all that kind of thing. And then they have to send a list of at least 3 people in a politically balanced list, meaning you can have, if it's 3, you can have no more than 2 of the governor's same party.
Okay.
And if it's more than 3, you can have no more than 60% of the governor's party. So in this list with the Democrat governor, I was a little bit fearful that, well, what if no Republicans or independents apply? That's a problem under our Constitution. Sure. So luckily we had 4 independents who applied and no Republicans, but I just need something to balance the list.
You share that, yes.
Yes. So we will, once they pick who they'd like, first they screen and they'd like to decide. I told you they have to send 3 ultimately, but not until they conduct interviews. So we'll have a screening meeting, decide who on paper, and getting all these recommendations because people weigh in, not only orally at the meeting, but they'll send in emails to each of these commissioners and such. And so then they'll decide who do we want to see, who do we want to interview. And again, in a public forum, people watching, people taking notes, people again get the comment, and then the person is interviewed and they're brought in one by one and asked the same questions for the most part, unless there's some individual tailored questions.
Oh, sure.
And you decide who's convinced you, who you think that you would think would be a qualified person to be picked for the court. And then they vote again in public and come up with a list. And sometimes it's a list of just 3. I think every time when I was set up, it was just 3. When I was in the Court of Appeals, I was on a list of 7. So it just depends on who it is, who's in the mix. Sometimes people just rise to the top and there's like 3 or 4, and maybe people will send those people. And when I say rise to the top, there's so many qualified people, but sometimes people, are just at different points in their career. And some people have more experience than others. Some people, they will get good feedback from the commission saying, we really liked you. It's just not your time yet.
Okay.
Keep doing it. And
so
I got that.
You do. It's not always the first time around.
Oh, well, it wasn't for me. So some people it is. Some people are these superstars that go right through, but I think I applied 3 times for the Court of Appeals and progressed each time. For the Supreme Court, I was sent up 3 times to the governor, and it was only my third one. And it's funny, people would say, oh my gosh, how could you possibly do this? Didn't you take offense? Well, no, I didn't take offense. How can you be that egotistical to think, well, I'm the only one? Of course it has to be me. There are other things to it. There not only the person's experience and background, but there's also some of the outer things. So, for example, the first time I didn't get it, it went to one of my colleagues on the Court of Appeals who sits in Tucson. He'd be the first and only person out of Tucson to sit on the court. And then, all right, the next time it went to my colleague who just retired. Well, he would have been the only one from a rural county and a trial court judge experience that I didn't have.
To balance things.
So, you can't take offense. Now, if I hadn't got it the 3rd time, I think maybe that would
have been enough.
But the governor was always delightful, and I enjoyed talking with her, Governor Brewer, who appointed me. And so, you have to stick with it if you really want this job or think that you have something to add to it.
Absolutely. So just quickly, and you went through this. What's it like to be the new kid on the block? This is obviously such an august body, and there's so much. There's just so much presence, and you're sort of new. Is it a collegial place? Do people, or is it more fractious? What's it like?
Yeah.
But when they close the doors,
behind the closed, really, it's a really nice place to work. It's a very collegial group. We don't agree with everything legally, but one thing we agree on is professionalism and respect, and just we like each other as people. And so we're pretty good, all of us, in finding common ground. There are things that they probably do think I'm goofy half the time, and I think they are sometimes. We don't all walk in lockstep at all, but we get along and we share some laughs, and we're all on the same floor, and I think that helps because if you're like in the Ninth Circuit, for example, and I don't know how they get along, so I'm not trying to use that example, but they're spread out all over in different cities, and they just meet for argument. They come together in a panel that is all in different cities, and they get to know each other in that context for those few days that they're working through a bunch of cases. Whereas, I can just, walk next door, I raid somebody's candy bowl. Well, they have kind of funny things, Halloween dress up things that the law clerks do. It's just more of a smaller shop. It has that feel for, you work in business of people that if you work together, you eat together, you know them a little better. And so there's not a lot of room for discord or a lot of energy for that. Each time someone new comes on, it's not, it's that it's bad or that, I don't like that they're here. It's a different feel. It's like you miss the other person and that group, but then you develop a new colleague and fit into the system, and it has a different feel. So I found, and of course, I knew everybody on the court when I joined it, and it was only a court of 5 when I joined. So there was just 4 other people, and I knew them all. Two of I worked with the Court of Appeals, and the other I worked closely with anyway.
So not that different.
No,
but.
So I knew. I just put stuff in the elevator and went upstairs and got a new office. It was probably different than if you're coming from an outside firm or place of work. But I think from my experience, the new people that have come on have really been pleasantly surprised and fit in rather seamlessly. Everyone makes that person feel very welcome. It's okay to ask a lot of questions. It's okay to speak up and speak your mind. That's why you're here. And it's been really delightful. We don't take that for granted because that's not the system in even other state Supreme Courts have been very divisive. And I always think, how do you go to work every day?
Very difficult.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that that's what we're doing here in Arizona. And it makes you have a lot more confidence in our system of government. The fact that you can disagree, and I'm sure you do, but you can also be collegial about it and get things done.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up, you talked about, you have kids, I have kids. When you talk to kids who are looking at getting into the law, now that you can look back, what do you tell them?
Learn how to write in high school, because they're not going to teach you in college. They're going to think you know how to write. If you want to be a lawyer someday, you need to know how to communicate. And that means communicate not only orally, but you need to know how to communicate in writing. And from my experience, when you go to college, they really assume that you have some basics on how to write. And maybe they might help you elevate your writing, but they're not there to teach you again. And law school's even more so. It's writing, and you need to really learn those basic fundamentals. It might not be fun, but when you're in high school, I would take any opportunity to take a writing-heavy course, and I would take any opportunity to stand up and speak on your feet when you can. Don't get nervous about, I might look silly. Well, you might. So what? What's going to happen? You need to learn to think on your feet and talk to people.
And would you still say it's a good career?
Oh, it's a great career. It's a great career. We had a ceremony this morning in the courtroom swearing in the new lawyers who just passed the bar and got admitted. And one of the things I said to them is that one thing about what you're going to do, what you do matters. You matter to communities and justice and adherence to the rule of law, and you have a real ability to help people and make positive changes in your local community, state, and nation. What's better than that?
That definitely would make you want to go to work in the morning, right? To do something where you're impacting people's lives. So as we wrap up, you obviously are in this incredible role with the Supreme Court. Life after the court, is there a vision for what that might look like?
Well, there's not, because I know my definite last day is June 30th, 2029, because my 5 years is up. I will not stay beyond that.
Okay. I'm
way beyond my, what I could have taken for my retirement.
Right.
So I would like to go back into the practice in some sort. I don't know that I was in private practice. I don't know that I have the appetite for doing what I did in my 20s and 30s with getting clients and, the business part of it, which is never the fun part of it. What I could foresee doing something like working with younger lawyers and bringing them along on how to write and how to have a persuasive argument and appellate briefs and trial court briefs and just kind of that type of thing, because they're going to go from there to really progress and hone their skill set to benefit benefit the clients and such. Right. So somebody's got to help them with that.
Beyond the paper chase.
Yeah, exactly. So I could see doing something like that if somebody's willing to hire me. I don't know if anybody's willing to hire me, but if they are, or if there's something in one of the things that I'm really passionate about in terms of, we hadn't discussed that, but some of the more innovative things that we're doing to try to have legal representation for people that are more moderate means. And frankly, any of us nowadays are more moderate means. Who can afford a lawyer?
Yes,
it's tough. So we're doing a lot along those lines to try to help Arizonans, and we've actually done things that no other state's doing. So if there's who knows what opportunities in 5 years, or I might just go on vacation. But
maybe a good job at Disneyland or something.
Oh my gosh, wouldn't that be fun?
There you go. Yeah. A perfect second act. Well, thank you for spending so much time with us and really for the service to the state of Arizona and the people of Arizona. It's very meaningful, and clearly that's in your heart, and it shows. We're gonna do a quick lightning round.
Okay.
New Year's resolution.
Oh, I've got to come up with one of those. New Year's resolution. Lightning's pretty slow, huh? Lightning rounds. New Year's resolution. Let me think. I always go to health. So better health, more stamina, more strength.
You go. Perfect. Who's your favorite author?
Oh, I think my brother's going to laugh. He claims it's not, but it is. Alexander Dumas. I like Three Musketeers.
Okay. So then I guess the final question was fiction or nonfiction. So it's
I like fiction, but I like a nonfiction though too. I shouldn't say that, but I you know what my favorite kind is the fiction that blends with real facts. So kind of historical fiction, kind of things like Michener did and travel places and things like that. I love that.
That's chewy stuff, Michener.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I never read the first chapter. I skip the land stuff until you hit people. Because he is in the weeds with the land form and the valleys and the hills. And it's like, okay, where are the people?
That's a good idea, because that was such a hard time getting past that first part.
I skip it.
All right, well, there we go. There's the tip of the day or the year. Thank you again, and we'd love to have you back again.
Oh, I'd love to come back. I'll let you know how it's going.
Excellent. Thanks for watching this episode of Let's Talk Business Phoenix. Please take a moment to tap the follow or subscribe button for more great podcast episodes to help your business thrive.